it's not too hard to find a good receiver. So let's go through some of my favorite wide receiver twos. We'll start at the top. I've been waiting all season to talk about this guy, Dontayvion Wicks, man. We liked Dontayvion Wicks last season. He has that ass, man. He really does. Wicks last season led the Packers in average separation score, beat Dobbs, beat Reed, beat Watson. Guess what? He's doing it again. He is 15th best by average separation score. That's ass. And yeah, last week, Christian Watson got hurt and kind of cleared the path a little bit for Wicks to further break out. We were kind of saying, yeah, Dobbs is the X, Jaden Reed's the slot, and then Watson and Wicks, they're going to rotate at flanker. Well, now Wicks gets the full-time Z receiver role. And listen here, this is just a beautiful matchup. The Los Angeles Rams are getting absolutely crushed by perimeter receivers, giving up nearly 2.7 yards per route run to receivers aligned out wide. That is easily a league high. No Watson last week. Wicks earned 31% of the first three targets. That was easily number one on the team over Dobbs and Reed, who are at 19%. Jaden Reed is must play, no question about it. I think Dontayvion Wicks is like one of the top wide receiver 2 plays on this slate. Really, really strong play. What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
What's going on, everybody? I am Graham Barfield, one of the co-owners here at FantasyPoints.com. Welcome back. Week 5. It's honestly, I kind of like this slate. I know it might seem counterintuitive with all the buys and stuff, but I think there's some good games on this slate. I think there's some really good plays on this slate, and I think we have a good feel as always. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the site. Make sure you're following our projections. Those are I treat those as set in stone. I go through, literally just went through all my lineups a couple minutes ago, going through projections. I write a free start sit article over on the site that kind of gives some color to those projections. And it's where all my weekly analysis lives. So if you like what you hear in this video, make sure you check out the site and check out my free article. Let's get to it though. We'll start with quarterback. And I don't want to take too big of a victory lap here with this player, given the history here. But Justin Fields, listen, we were kind of all over it last week. We were all over the breakout performance. We noted, it was a really good matchup. Colts pass rush has been struggling. Their secondary is not very good. It ended up being just an absolute ceiling performance from Fields. He continued to show well as a passer, but obviously got there in fantasy with the 2 rushing scores at the goal line. I'm going right back to him, man. I think Fields is really underrated right now. I think projections are finally starting to come around on Fields across the industry. Listen, he's just improved as a passer massively. We were all over this last week. The time to throw is significantly lower. He's taking fewer sacks, which means he's taking, less negative plays. The biggest thing that I've noted, at least, it's not me that's noting it. Our charting team has noticed, I should say, at Fantasy Points Data. We have charted Fields with a 57% highly accurate throw rate through 4 games. I mean, that is so massively bullish. Only Tua Tagovailoa and Andy Dalton have a higher accurate throw rate. Obviously, 2 pocket quarterbacks that predicate themselves on timing and rhythm. Fields is in a good timing and rhythm, man, and how he catches this Dallas defense without Micah Parsons, without DeMarcus Lawrence. I mean, the Cowboys just allowed Daniel Jones to throw for 281 yards last week, and Jones can't throw for deeper than 15 yards downfield. I mean, he left multiple big plays on the field last week. Yeah, I'm going right back to Fields as a QB1. I think he's borderlining on must start this week. One quarterback we've been all over, at least as a streamer to start the season, is Sam Darnold. He's a tricky call this week, obviously. Jets, we got to give them a ton of respect. Their secondary is legit. They've been able to, kind of manufacture some pass rush here and there, but really it's just the secondary. Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed are the 2 best perimeter cornerback tandem. Sauce is really good, but I think DJ Reed might be one of the most underrated players in the NFL. We've been all over Sam Darnold, right? We've gotten it right every single week. He's finished as a top 10 fantasy quarterback in 3 straight games. Darnold is just playing at a really high level. This is such a tough matchup, though. Jets are giving up the second fewest passing fantasy points per dropback and the second fewest pass yards per attempt. Games in London, I don't know, man. Those games are always a little tricky, end up being a little sloppier. We're a little lower on Darnold this week in projections. I am personally sitting him in a few spots in one quarterback leagues where I've been playing him. You're not taking him out of super flex lineups, but if you've been rolling with Darnold, I think this is the week to get off. All right. We talked about it last week with Anthony Richardson. I just can't quit this guy, right? I it's like a form of self-punishment I can't get over. Anthony Richardson either scores 30 fantasy points in a game or he gets gravely injured. That's about the way his career has gone. Obviously the struggles as a passer we were noting last week, the off-target throw rate, turnover-worthy throw rate, still bottom of the league. Got hurt last week running. They brought him back into the game, called a designed run on the very next play, and he got hurt and brought out of the game. I think Richardson was going to run more last week. He should be close to fully healthy this week. He has a hip pointer. Our guy Edwin Porras said it's really no big deal. Shouldn't be an issue long term. And now he catches the best matchup in the world against the Jaguars. This team, this secondary just is really struggling without Tyson Campbell. They can get to the passer a little bit with their rush, but it's not enough to stop the bleeding in the secondary. This defense is giving up the second most passing fantasy points per game. Only the Commanders are giving up more passing fantasy points per game. And the best part of this is Jacksonville plays so much man coverage. They play the most man coverage nearly 50% of the time. So that means cornerbacks are going to have their backs turned in coverage when they're facing Anthony Richardson half the time, which means Richardson's going to have some scramble lanes. He might be a little more limited this week, obviously, with the hip issue. But what's that quote that Shane Steichen said back in the offseason? We don't tell Steph Curry to stop shooting when he misses all his threes. I don't know if A-Rich has gotten to the Steph Curry trust level worthy yet here, Steichen, but I think they're going to run him. And I think A-Rich is one of the highest ceiling quarterback plays on the slate this coming week. All right, let's move it over to running back. It is definitely a worse off week at this position than it's been all year, obviously, with the buys and just a little bit of attrition setting in. It's still pretty good position, though. We always kind of start in the RB2 pile. Really quickly, let's go through the running backs that you're just not taking out of your lineup. I don't care if your house is on fire, if your phone's on fire, just don't take these dudes out. Obviously, Kamara, Jordan Mason, Kyren Williams, Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, Bijan. He's in the Thursday game, but Bijan. Hey, sorry about Ken Walker last week. Terrible call on my part. He ended up with 3 touchdowns. He's a must-play this week against a weak Giants front. He was a little more limited last week, 60 to 40 snap share with Charbonnet, but I fully expect that to be his backfield going forward. He is just so good at the game. Listen, Breece Hall still must start. Same with Chuba Hubbard this week. He gets one more week without Jonathan Brooks. And I think Jerome Ford and Brian Robinson are just among the 2 best RB2 plays on this slate. Nick Chubb probably is not going to play this week. Even if he does, they're going to try to ramp him up. And this Commanders front is just giving up so many fantasy points to opposing running backs. I think top 5 in scrimmage yards a game per allowed. So let's go through the RB2 pile, right? I have Devon Achane on a lot of teams. A lot. It's been painful the last couple weeks. They can't run competent offense. And the analysis has been mostly, why can't Mike McDaniel get competent quarterback play out of, Skylar Thompson and Snoop Huntley like Matt LaFleur can out of Malik Willis? And it's a valid concern. However, Snoop Huntley and Skylar Thompson are not near the pedigree of passer that Malik Willis was, even coming out of college. So let's just say that. We had major concerns coming out of college with Willis. The Snoop Huntley, I had a little bit of hope that he would be better than Skylar Thompson, and last week was not good. 22% off-target throw rate. He had a nearly 10% turnover-worthy throw rate, according to our charting team. It was bad. Listen, they're going to get Teron Armstead back, their stud tackle. He missed last week with a concussion. I think you cannot take Achane out of lineups as an RB2. Obviously we were, jumping for joy weeks 1 and 2 with Achane, calling him a must start. You're still playing him as an RB2. I think the upside here is still really strong. Over the last 2 weeks, this Patriots defense has given up 329 scrimmage yards on the ground, through the air, to running backs. That's Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, Jordan Mason. Yeah, two very productive backfields. But guess what? The Dolphins' backfield was just 2 weeks ago extremely productive. Obviously the big concern with Huntley is just, what measure of competency can we get here? The good news is this game should be close. I don't see the Patriots offense just absolutely smoking Miami. And, the Dolphins should be able to, try to run the ball this week, especially with Armstead back. I'm scared too, man. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm scared too with Achane, but I'm playing him everywhere. I have him as an RB2. Speaking of playing him wherever you have him, this is a play him wherever you have him if you got Javonte Williams. We have had him on the sit list for, 3 straight weeks to start the season. Haven't been wrong once on that one. However, this is the week to play him, man. This backfield kind of shifted towards Williams last week with Tyler Bede, I believe it is, actually. He had a scary injury last week with a back injury. He is most likely headed to IR. Audric Estime, the rookie, is still on IR. I think he can come back next week. So listen, we're back to just Javonte and Jaleel McLaughlin. And McLaughlin is off to a pretty slow start in his own right. He has 34 touches. Yikes, and just 94 scrimmage yards to show for it. He did score, but, it's been a tough start for this entire backfield. This is the spot, though, okay? This is the spot. Raiders defense is getting shredded on the ground. League high, 5.4 yards per carry. Mad Max Crosby missed last week, his first ever career missed game. He's obviously a difference maker. They were struggling against the run, even with Crosby in there. Crosby missing another game here would just really boost this spot for Javonte. This is the highest he's been in our projections all year, and it makes a ton of sense. If you drafted Javonte, this is the reason you started him. You drafted him here. No reason not to start him. Broncos are favored against a bad run defense. Very few of these spots going to happen this year for Javonte. All right, we'll go to the bottom of the RB2 pile, 2 players that I'm a little afraid of putting in my lineups this week. The first one is Rico Dowdle. I think he's just a little trappy this week. Last week was a good spot. We were just saying, look, Zeke snaps have been cut in every game so far this season. He's started the season at 50%, cut all the way down to 42, then 20, and then last week he was at 18% against the Giants. They're going to give Dowdle a legitimate chance as the early down back, the goal line back too. But their fullback, Hunter Luki, yeah, man, he ran more routes than Dowdle last week. This is a really tough front seven. Dowdle will always kind of live in this low end RB2 pile this year because it just seems like Dallas is always going to have some sort of rotation, right? Like whether it's Zeke, whether it's their fullback, kind of protecting for Dak and running a few routes. Dowdle will probably never truly break out as a workhorse unless there's injuries. This is one spot I'm a little bit afraid of, though. Dallas going on the road into Pittsburgh against a good front seven that's playing really good run defense. I think Pittsburgh wins this game, man. I think, we're all over Fields. I just think they're the better team. They're the healthier team, especially defensively. It's no shade against this Cowboys defense. They've just been cleaned out by injuries. But yeah, a little afraid to put Rico into lineups this week. Obviously, Rhamondre Stevenson it's been trending down since week 1. Really badly. As the resident Rhamondre Stevenson stan, this has been a painful couple of weeks. We don't need to talk much about what this Patriots offense is right now, right? We all see it. This team just lost their center, though. David Andrews, longtime center. He's going to go on IR with a shoulder injury, most likely going to miss the rest of the year. And they were already kind of dealing with some injuries and just missed their starting left tackle, and their backup got hurt last week. It has been a nightmare for the Patriots offensive line, and it's been a nightmare for Stevenson, man. 4 fumbles. Coach Gerard Mayo after the game, I think it was Monday or Tuesday in his press conference, was saying, yeah, the Patriots, listen, we're kind of considering, playing Antonio Gibson more, playing him more as a starter. Not great. A split backfield on the worst offense in the league behind the worst offensive line in the league is not what we want. We just talked about it with Achane. This is going to be a close game. I guess we can hold on to that. It's going to be a close game. Patriots are going to be run heavy. If you drafted Stevenson, man, it'd be really, really hard to put him in the lineups this week with any confidence. Hopefully you have some solid depth. Picked up some guys off the waiver wire for this week because, Stevenson, I think at this point, he kind of has to re-earn his job after all the fumbles. And Antonio Gibson looks pretty good, man. Looks pretty good. All right, we'll keep it on going to receiver. This is probably the most straightforward week we've had at receiver in a long time. I've been saying for a few weeks now that running back has just been relatively much stronger than receiver. This kind of feels like a little bit of a different week. Receivers are really deep. I think there are legitimately 30 to 35 startable, like really good. You could squint and say, hey, this guy's my wide receiver 2 this week. It's not too hard to find a good receiver. So let's go through some of my favorite wide receiver 2s. We'll start at the top. I've been waiting all season to talk about this guy, Dontayvion Wicks, man. We liked Dontayvion Wicks last season. He has that ass, man. He really does. Wicks last season led the Packers in average separation score, beat Dobbs, beat Reed, beat Watson. Guess what? He's doing it again. He is 15th best by average separation score. That's ass. And yeah, last week, Christian Watson got hurt and kind of cleared the path a little bit for Wicks to further break out. We were kind of saying, yeah, Dobbs is the X, Jaden Reed's the slot, and then Watson and Wicks, they're going to rotate at flanker. Well, now Wicks gets the full time Z receiver role. And listen here, this is just a beautiful matchup. The Los Angeles Rams are getting absolutely crushed by perimeter receivers, giving up nearly 2.7 yards per route run to receivers aligned out wide. That is easily a league high. Yeah, no Watson last week. Wicks earned 31% of the first 3 targets. That was easily number 1 on the team over Dobbs and Reed, who are at 19%. Jaden Reed is must play, no question about it. I think Dontayvion Wicks is like one of the top wide receiver 2 plays on this slate. Really, really strong play. Moving on over to the Monday night game real quick. Rasheed Shaheed gets a tougher matchup. Chiefs playing a ton of too high. They don't, give up basically any big plays. They, just kind of stick in their too high shell. They play a little bit of man coverage to kind of switch it up a little bit. Trent McDuffie's having a good year and man, but I don't really care. I think Rasheed Shaheed is just a really good wide receiver 2 play for the rest of the year. Changed up usage last week for Shaheed. He's not just a deep threat anymore. We kind of saw last week, the Falcons play a lot of zone. Same kind of thing, trying to keep everything in front of them. We finally saw Shaheed get, legitimate middle of the field usage. And in this spot, against Chiefs, we're going to need that. We're going to need Shaheed to kind of run some of those shallower routes over the middle of the field, those quick timing patterns, because the Chiefs are just not going to let Shaheed fly down the field past him, man. They're going to play a lot of too high. Like I said, tougher matchup, but I am playing Shaheed once again as a wide receiver 2. One more receiver that I love this week, just love this spot, love this game. If A-Rich is healthy, this game could go absolutely off. I love Brian Thomas this week, man. Dude looks like an absolute future stud. He has 9 targets in back-to-back games. Obviously, Evan Ingram, being out kind of impacts that, condenses targets down a little bit. But 9 targets in back-to-back games. This is a huge breakout spot for Thomas. We were all over it last week with George Pickens. I kind of see a similar sort of play here. The Colts just have no chance at covering Thomas. They're giving up the 6th most receiving yards per game to outside receivers. And it's been a tiny little sample, right? Tiny sample. But according to our data, according to FantasyPoints data, Thomas has been absolutely shredding cover 3 zones. Just shredding. Leads the team in target share at 27% against cover 3. Trevor Lawrence has targeted him 9 times. He's turned those looks into 7 receptions for 127 yards, nearly 4 yards per route run. So we line it all up, right? Colts secondary stinks. They play a ton of cover 3. Thomas has been crushing cover 3 single high shells. And the Colts play a ton of cover 3. It's a staple of Gus Bradley's defense. They play it 43% of the time. BTJ and Dontayvion Wicks, I think, are my 2 favorite receiver 2 plays this week. Shaheed would probably be the 3rd there, but I think BTJ could have just a massive week in this game against the Colts. All right, one super sneaky receiver I like, especially in PPR leagues. Raiders Tre Tucker. Good at the game, man. I just think Tre Tucker's good. He looked pretty good, small sample stuff last year, and the little bit he got on the field last week was pretty good. He ran most of his routes out wide, which was a little bit surprising to me. I thought he'd be a little more of a slot receiver given his size, but ran 80% of his routes out wide last week. And yeah, Davante Adams is going to miss another game with a hamstring injury that, man, weirdly won't get better until he gets traded out of Las Vegas. Like the second he hits that tarmac in Vegas, it's just going to feel better. It's going to be weird. It's going to be crazy. But no Adams again this week. Jacoby Myers might get shadow treatment from Pat Surtain. Our guy, Stephen O'Rourke, excellent data analyst, excellent charter here at Fantasy Points Data. He runs the wide receiver cornerback spreadsheet that we have up on the site for subscribers. And he thinks Surtain shadows Jacoby Myers. I think that makes some sense. Surtain's just been erasing, top receivers to start the season. If that happens, Tre Tucker is going to be, lined up outside, getting legitimate, kind of downfield-ish usage. Obviously, he got a rushing touchdown last week with the reverse. Tre Tucker, really, really sneaky play this week if you're just dying at receiver or dealing with Jalen Waddle. I'm dealing with Jalen Waddle in quite a few leagues, and I am sick of it. It's just not going to get any better until Tua comes back. That's really just where I'm at with it. 5 games not started by Tua or Teddy Bridgewater, who, oh, by the way, put some respect on his name, was pretty good last time he played, Teddy B. But Jalen Waddle, 23, 52, 44, 26, and 36 receiving yards in those 5 games with Skylar Thompson and Snoop Huntley. Oof, boy. I mean, Tyreek, still the first read. We saw it again last week. Waddle always has to do less with more. Yeah, it's painful, man. I'm taking Waddle out of lineups again this week. Another guy I am not letting touch a lineup right now is Rome Odunze, and it really doesn't have anything to do with him. I think Odunze looks great. The separation stuff has been really good. I just think this Bears offense is an absolute nightmare. Just going back and watching the last couple of weeks, Shane Waldron is giving Caleb Williams no answers in the middle of the field. I mean, this is such a poorly timed, poorly schemed offense, and it's sad, man, because these 3 guys are just they could technically play off of each other so well. Bears are bottom 8 in terms of motion, pre-snap or during the snap basis. Get these guys moving, get these guys leverage on corners. Like there's so many things this offense could be doing better to better support Caleb, who's not playing in, particularly well in his own right. And just the 2 games that we've seen, week 1 and week 4 with this Bears receiver trio, Odunze has just 6 targets. DJ Moore has 14. Keenan has 11. The first read target share stuff is really bad for Odunze. Moore is up at 35%. Keenan has 27% of the first reads. Odunze has just 9%. Yeah, can't play him in a lineup. And honestly, I'm a little afraid of Keenan Allen too. Like Odunze and Allen have kind of split routes a little bit too. Bears like to play a lot of 12 personnel, two tight end sets with Gerald Everett and Cole Kmet. Yeah, it's scary hours for Odunze's stock right now. Final receiver, I am not playing. It's not really due to the injury for Tank Dell. I think he's going to be back. He has bruised ribs. He got blasted at the end of their game against the Vikings a couple weeks ago. It's obviously a slow start for Dell. I have him in a few leagues, and I'm benching him outright in those leagues. This is just a Stephon Diggs spot, and I know it has nothing to do with the revenge game narrative. It's actually just the Diggs game. Bills are playing so much too high coverage, 62% of the time. It's the 4th highest rate. Basically, only the Vikings and Chiefs play more too high coverage just as a part of their weekly scheme. And when facing too high this season, CJ Stroud has obviously peppered Nico Collins, 26% of the targets against too high. But second is Stephon Diggs at 20%. Tank Dell is at 12% in those 3 games, weeks 1 through 3 against too high coverages. And Buffalo just, again, by their scheme, they play a lot of too high. That forces kind of everything to the middle of the field, forces things kind of the shallow areas, and that's where Stephon Diggs is running his routes. We see this in our data. The Bills have been 41% of the targets that the Bills have faced have gone to slot receivers. So it's a Diggs week, not a Dell week. I do think Dell is still a pretty good buy low, though, long term. Like he's going to have some weeks late in the season, still has strong contingent upside if Diggs or Collins were to miss time. All right, we got to do it. We'll finish out here with tight ends. I hate doing this too. Every single week, got to talk tight ends, and it's the most dreaded 5 minutes of my life. No, I'm just joking. It's always fun sorting through the pile. Last week we had some hits and misses with streamers. We did like Pat Freiermuth quite a bit as a streamer. I'm going to go to him once again. I think he's a fine streaming play this week. Listen, he's consistently involved. He's going to be clearly the number 2 target in a game that we think can, kind of shoot out Cowboys Steelers. And only 2 tight ends this season have finished top 15 in fantasy points at the position on a weekly basis in every game they played this season. It's Pat Freiermuth and George Kittle. Freiermuth obviously does not have the ceiling of George Kittle, so don't get it twisted. He's a consistent player at a position that we don't have any consistency at. Evan Ingram, David Njoku, both are going to be playing this week, both back on the football field. Ingram and Njoku have both missed 3 games with their injuries. We have Ingram higher in projections just because it's such a good spot. Like, God, it's such a good spot. I wish I knew for sure that Ingram was fully back off this hamstring injury, because if I knew he was, like, I'd be slamming in Ingram in all of my lineups. But Colts have been shredded last 2 weeks. Cole Kmet got him for 10 catches, 97 yards, and a score. Last week we were on Pat Freiermuth. Darnell Washington also had a little bit of a long gain, 7 catches, 88 yards, and a touch for Steelers tight ends last week. So just a really good spot for Ingram. And it's a really good spot for Njoku too. Like, even if these guys are limited on like 60, 65% route shares this week coming back from injuries, I mean, they're immediately rejoining the low end tight end 1 radar. I'm playing those guys where I have them. And I'm also playing Tucker Kraft, man. It's Tucker Kraft week. It wasn't just the kind of jailbreak game script last week where, Vikings got up huge, didn't really have to do much in the second half, but the Packers and Jordan Love just chucked the entire second half. That's kind of a weird game script. Not probably going to happen again this week, but we saw a huge change in Green Bay's tight end committee. Luke Musgrave and Kraft were splitting routes to start the season. Kraft's route share was just 51% in the first 3 games. However, last week that spiked all the way up to 84%. LaFleur is just saying, hey, well, look, we think Kraft's the better player. We think he gives us more juice. If that continues, at the very least, Kraft is going to be a low-end tight end 1 for the rest of the year. 84% route share is elite. Like, very few tight ends are playing on 80% of the team's pass plays. Keep in mind, here at Fantasy Points Data, we don't chart blocking as a route. That's stupid. Why would you ever chart a tight end who's never gonna get a target blocking on a screenplay? Weirdly, tight ends that are blocking on screens have a career 0 targets per route run. It's funny how that works. We don't do that here at Fantasy Points Data. We don't chart blocking snaps for tight ends because it does happen a ton. As routes and Kraft's 84% route share is really strong. This is such a good spot, man. Like, we were all over Dontayvion Wicks, obviously, but Rams have given up 17 catches, 207 yards, and a touchdown on 18 targets. Nearly perfect game kind of stuff against tight ends this season. So if you picked up Kraft, there's like, 6 tight ends I think I'd play over him this week? I think there's 6. We'll go through those real quick. I think Jake Ferguson's must start and probably the best tight end play on the slate, followed by Travis Kelce, then Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, George Kittle. George Kittle must play, obviously. Even with the ribs injury, then I think it's Kraft, man. That's about it. And that's about it for me. Guys, thanks so much for hanging out, listening. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. If you have a start-sit question, make sure you're asking myself, John Hanson, and Tom Brawley on Sunday mornings. We go live early in the morning, answer all of your questions that you pop into the YouTube chat, so make sure you're around for that one. It's usually go live around 11-ish a.m. on Sunday mornings. That's going to do it for me. I hope you have a great week 5, and we will see you at the top of the leaderboards.